Once upon a time, in a small community in Jamaica, there lived a widowed woman named Daphne. Daphne lived with her only child, Zara. Daphne's husband had passed away several years earlier due to an unknown illness. Daphne decided never to remarry but spent all her time raising her daughter, Zara. Zara was the apple of her mother's eyes, and Daphne showered her with love, until one day. Zara met a handsome man named Carlos, and they found each other incredibly interesting. They exchanged contact information so they could get to know each other better. Before long, they were in a committed relationship. After a year, Carlos proposed to Zara, as he had found his forever partner in her. With the support of his mother, he popped the question. Everything went well until Zara went home to tell her mother. She explained that she'd bring Carlos over another day so her mother could speak with him. Zara's mother, Daphne, was furious and openly told her daughter that she could not marry Carlos, firmly stating that she would never approve of the marriage. Zara, bewildered by her mother's opposition, asked her why she felt this way, but Daphne never provided any reasons as to why Carlos wasn't good for her. The tension between mother and daughter grew, as Daphne's disapproval loomed over Zara's blossoming relationship. Undeterred by her mother's disapproval, Zara continued to see Carlos and even went ahead with making wedding plans, determined to follow her heart. As her relationship with Carlos deepened, she spent more and more time with him, often staying away from home. This only further infuriated her mother, Daphne, whose resentment and anger grew as she planned to deal with Carlos in her own way for attempting to marry her daughter against her wishes. Tensions within the family escalated as Zara stood resolute in her love for Carlos. Early the next morning, Daphne headed to her coven headquarters to seek advice from her fellow witches on how to deal with Carlos. After their consultation, tapping into their dark powers, they devised a sinister plan to make Carlos and Zara's marriage a living nightmare. They had discovered that they couldn't directly harm Carlos, as his mother's continuous prayers had covered him like a shield of protection. Initially, Daphne had approached them with the intention of causing harm to Carlos. However, she left with a dark assignment, to attack Carlos through her own daughter, Zara. Zara was to become the living sacrifice, subjected to torment, until she decided to follow her mother's wishes and be obedient to the coven's sinister plans. The story took a dark and ominous turn as the coven plotted their malevolent course of action. Though Zara saw the changes in her mother's attitude, she could never even imagine what her mother was truly capable of. This was the first time Zara had dared to disobey her mother's wishes, and little did she know, it was the beginning of a painful and harrowing journey. Unaware of her mother's dark and sinister nature, Zara was unwittingly embarking on a road filled with unimaginable pain and suffering. The path ahead would reveal the depths of her mother's malevolence, shaking Zara to her core. The mother and daughter once loving relationship turned sour after Daphne asked her only daughter not to marry the man she chose. Zara didn't give thought to her mother's warnings and went ahead to marry her love Carlos. After Zara got married, she had a happy home with a loving husband who treated her like a queen. However, her old mother wasn't happy about her newfound love and happiness. Each time Zara conceived, she'd have a nightmare seeing her own mother taking away her child by force. When she awoke from her dreams, she saw signs of a miscarriage. Her husband Carlos was confused because each time he took his wife to the doctor, they would tell them nothing was wrong with her. They couldn't figure out why she was having miscarriages. Zara cried to her husband, saying, "Honey, what have I done? Why am I losing all our children?" Carlos then turned to her, reassuring her that it's God who gives children, and he will surely remember them. Zara was comforted by her husband's reassuring words. After they got home from the hospital, Zara called her mother Daphne to notify her of the loss of yet another pregnancy. Her mother wasted no time in telling Zara that she warned her about marrying Carlos, and since she disobeyed her, she would continue having miscarriages until she came back home and dissolved that marriage. Zara was shocked and asked her mother if she wished her evil in her marriage. Her mother laughed and said Zara was paying the price of her disobedience. Before Zara could say another word, her mother hung up on her. Zara was confused why her own mother would want her to leave her marriage to return home. Zara tried to push aside her mother's harsh words and went to bed. The next morning, while making breakfast for her husband, Zara had an accident in the kitchen which resulted in cutting her finger on one of the kitchen knives. Carlos heard her scream and rushed in to find his wife lying on the floor unconscious. Carlos rushed Zara to the hospital because all his attempts to revive her proved futile. After some minutes being admitted to the hospital, Zara regained consciousness only to start crying, telling her husband that she could not recall what happened to her. The last thing she remembered was preparing breakfast. Everything else was a blur. Her husband Carlos calmed her down and assured her that she would be okay. After 2 days in the hospital, the doctor released Zara home in the care of her husband Carlos and asked that Zara take some time to rest and not stress herself. Zara agreed, and she and Carlos went home. Several weeks went by, and Zara and Carlos moved forward from the hurt and pain that losing their unborn child caused. A few months later, Zara's mother Daphne was furious. She went to her longtime friend and coven leader Mrs. Sterling for advice. Mrs. Sterling advised her to make sure her daughter Zara is back home before the next year. Otherwise, there would be repercussions. Daphne sighed, asking Mrs. Sterling how she could get Zara back. She had already tried frustrating her by taking away her children, but nothing worked. Mrs. Sterling laughed and told her whatever she needed to do. As Daphne walked home, she concocted a plan to visit her daughter Zara and her husband Carlos. The following day, Daphne made her way to Zara's house. Upon getting there and ringing the doorbell, she got no answer. She waited for hours but was forced to return to her own home. When she got back home, she was fuming with thoughts as to why her daughter Zara didn't inform her she wouldn't be at home. She called her several times but couldn't connect to her line. She planned to revisit in a few days. Until then, she'd continue to ring her daughter's cell phone to get in touch with her. Meanwhile, Zara was back in the hospital, losing yet another pregnancy. After losing this last pregnancy, her mother-in-law paid her a visit at the hospital and advised her son Carlos to take his wife Zara to see a pastor to pray for her, as she did not believe that Zara's multiple miscarriages were natural. Though heartbroken and devastated at the loss of all her babies, she agreed to visit a man of God. After recovering a few days in the hospital, they went to see a powerful man of God who revealed to them that Zara had eaten from the hands of a witch, and each time she became pregnant, her children would be taken. Zara knew the one from whose hands she ate. Everyone was surprised, as they didn't understand what the man of God was saying. The man of God told them all would be revealed after they went on a 7-day fasting to break the hold of witchcraft hovering around them. He advised them not to miss a day of fasting, as the enemy was planning a new attack. He strictly warned against the use of any devices and distractions. They shouldn't have any visitors, no matter who the person was. They all agreed. The following day, Zara's mother Daphne visited unexpectedly, banging at the door. Zara proceeded to rush to the door when her husband Carlos stopped her, reminding her of the man of God's instructions. Zara then told her husband she had forgotten, but it was her mother. How could she ignore her own mother banging at the door? Carlos reminded her of the importance of adhering to the instructions. Carlos reassured her that they would go see her mother after the fasting was completed and that her mother would understand. Daphne, feeling uneasy as her time was running out, furiously walked away, determined to catch her daughter when she was coming back home, believing she had left the country without notifying her. She waited some hours at the gate but never saw her daughter. After she got tired, she decided to head home and visit early in the morning. She repeated this for 3 mornings but never saw Zara or her husband Carlos. She went back to Mrs. Sterling, as she had become desperate. Mrs. Sterling laughed and warned her that she had 48 hours to see her daughter, otherwise, she would have to take her place. After hearing all this, Daphne was confused as to why Zara was not reachable. While lost in thoughts, she stumbled into the busy street and was knocked down by a car. She was rushed to the nearest hospital, where she was admitted in a serious condition. Meanwhile, at Carlos and Zara's house, the 7-day fasting came to an end. Zara finally reached out to her mother Daphne to check in on her. But when she got no reply, she went to her mother's house with the intention to explain things to her about why she'd been unavailable for some time. After getting there, she was intercepted by a neighbor and told the sad news about her mother's hospitalization. Zara didn't waste any time. She rushed to the hospital to see her mother. Zara rushed to the hospital. Upon getting there and seeing her mother in that state, she called her husband Carlos to inform him of what was happening. He rushed over to the hospital soon as he hung up the phone. While there, they contacted their pastor. After the pastor arrived, they held hands and prayed for Zara's mother Daphne. She suddenly started screaming. The man of God had a revelation. He prompted her to confess. Though she hesitated, she started confessing everything. How she was a witch practicing dark magic because she wanted to live a luxurious lifestyle which her husband wasn't able to provide for her. She was responsible for all her daughter Zara's miscarriages, as she had made an agreement with her coven to not bear a child. But when she had Zara, she broke the rules, and her husband, Zara's father, paid the price after her disobedience. She was then instructed to never allow Zara to marry or have her own children. When Zara married Carlos without her consent, after several warnings against marriage and making up reasons why Carlos wasn't fit to be Zara's husband, she decided to punish Zara and Carlos for their disobedience by taking all their children. She would visit Zara each time she conceived, and cooked for her a delicious meal, which Zara always enjoyed, only for Zara to lose her pregnancy weeks later. She narrated how she was given 48 hours to see Zara so she could trade Zara's life with her own, but she was knocked down by a car. Zara could not believe that her own mother was the one causing her miscarriages. Suddenly, Daphne started coughing repeatedly and asked Zara to forgive her. Zara was hurt, and Carlos was still in shock at the revelation. The man of God asked them to forgive Daphne, and they both told her they forgave her. Within minutes, she passed away. After Daphne's coven heard of her passing, they made several attempts on Zara's life, seeking exact vengeance for their fallen sister and coven member. However, all their efforts proved futile. Instead, something inexplicable occurred. With each attempt on Zara's life, multiple members of their evil coven met their demise. The once mighty coven that had put fear in the hearts of the locals found itself crumbling. Their dark powers waned, and they dwindled in size, with only 3 members remaining. These last survivors of the once feared coven found themselves powerless and weak. Their sinister influence had been shattered, and they had no choice but to retreat and accept their defeat. As the locals heard the news of the evil witch's demise, they cheered and rejoiced. They were now free from their oppressive grip. The tide had turned, and the forces of darkness had been vanquished. After Zara's mother burial, Zara and Carlos went about their lives. Within a year, Zara gave birth to a handsome, healthy baby boy. The couple had gone through unimaginable trials, but their faith and love for each other helped them overcome the darkness that had surrounded them. Zara, Carlos, and their child could now live their lives without the looming threat of the coven, knowing that good had ultimately triumphed over evil. They discovered solace in their deep love for each other and in their unwavering faith in God, especially for the well-being of their child and the promise of a brighter future. Despite the challenges of their painful past, they were resolute in their commitment to craft a warm and nurturing environment for their son, one untouched by the shadows of their history. As the years passed, Zara and Carlos's family flourished. Despite the horror they've faced in the past, including multiple miscarriages, and the heartbreak of losing Zara's mother, they eventually had the family they had fervently prayed for. In total, they were blessed with 4 children, consisting of 2 sons and 2 daughters. Their journey became a testament to the enduring power of faith, resilience, and the unwavering strength of love in overcoming even the darkest of circumstances. In the end, this story teaches us profound lessons that resonate with the power of prayers, the boundless love of God, and the ultimate triumph over evil. Zara's journey is a testament to the strength of faith and the resilience of the human spirit. It vividly portrays how even in the face of darkness, love can conquer all. Moreover, the tale serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of greed and wickedness. Zara's mother, driven by her own desires, allowed her heart to be consumed by the darkness of her covetousness, even to the detriment of her own daughter. Did you enjoy this story? If so, please like this video, share, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Thank you for watching.